This is from Khalil Gibran, the philosopher, and he said that we are a collection of broken mirrors. Each piece reflects those we've met along the way.
Leona Rocha Wilson has collected many shiny chapters in her life since she was born in a small Maui community that no longer exists. She invented a device well known to people who sew at home, and she became a successful East Coast businesswoman. Today, she advocates passionately for education, hosting a Maui-based cable show, Go School, No Come Like Me. Next on Long Story Short.
Long Story Short with Leslie Wilcox is Hawaii's first weekly television program produced and broadcast in high definition.
Aloha mai kako, I'm Leslie Wilcox. Leona Rocha Wilson is not coy about her age, 72 when we spoke on Long Story Short in 2009. I'm mentioning this because she looks younger, and when she talks about her generation, you'll need to know that it's a generation that grew up with sugar as king. Leona moved back to Maui after a successful career on the continent. Her first years were spent on a sugar plantation located between Paia and Haiku. Its name was Hamakuapoko Camp, but residents called it H-Poko. Leona's father was a truck driver and her mother cleaned houses and worked at the cannery. Her family was eventually able to buy a home in Dream City, better known today as Kahului. Leona, the youngest of 6 children, attended Maui and Baldwin high schools. In years to come, Leona was influenced by mentors, whom she credits with helping her achieve success as a businesswoman, as a national spokesperson for the home sewing industry, and as an inventor of the fashion ruler, a tool still in use today. Leona Wilson's self-determination was forged early on, inspired by the example of her grandmother from Portugal.
My grandmother gave up her life, actually, to come to Hawaii. She and my grandfather came over with my mother at 9-month-old child to get on a ship to come to a place that she had never seen before, no one else had seen. They spent 6 months traveling, and my grandmother coming here, never ever to see her mother again, never ever to see her sisters and her brothers and her aunties and her uncles. My thinking was, if my grandmother gave up so much, I owe her, I really owe her, and I owe my grandfather to be the best person I could be.
And how did you go about doing that?
My mother. My mother, a remarkable woman, 4th grade education, and my father, probably the brightest man I've ever met with a 4th grade education. My mother had more common sense than 100 people. Her common sense was the very thing that helped the entire family.
What kind of common sense? Give me an example.
Well, give you an example. Being raised in the plantation, she realized that that was a very small part of the world. And so she said to all of us, upon graduating from high school, go to the mainland, go see what else is happening there.
Had she ever been to the mainland?
No, not my father did, but not my mother.
Go to sights unseen.
Yes, go try, go see. You don't want to end up with your life saying, I should have done that and I should have done that. She said here, so upon graduating from high school, she gave us, not me, but my sisters and my brothers, a round-trip ticket to the mainland. Her feeling about that round-trip ticket was that if you went to the mainland and you found that you wanted to remain, you could cash in that ticket and use it to live on. And if you didn't, you always had that ticket to come back. She was so sensitive to everyone's needs that in her bedroom, she had 3 statues. The Blessed Mother, St. Joseph, and Christ. And under those 3 statues, she put $5, $10, and $20. The entire family knew where that money was. And she told all of us, if you need money, you know where it is, under one rule. And the rule was, if you take it, you must eventually replace it. her sense of dignity, if you will, we didn't have to ask for money. When we worked, we gave everything back to our parents, and they used it to support the family. So the family became very, very important, and to this day remains very important. My sisters and brothers, which is really one of the reasons I came home, to be with the family.
Do you remember instances of sibling rivalry? How come he gets that and I don't have that kind of thing?
Oh, no. You know what? No, not ever, but I can tell you this. My sisters were so attractive that one of the things I made up my mind was, which is why I became the student, was that my sisters were so pretty and I couldn't match up to them. So I said, okay, if I can't be what they are, that's where the only competition came in, was that I was going to be the best student I could be. We knew in our family that the one thing that was going to propel us, if you will, or move us forward was education. In high school, I was a fairly good student, not the best. I was a song leader, so I spent more time being a song leader than I did, though I was okay in school. When I graduated, or before I graduated, my mother and I sat down, and she said, what are we going to do? I said, well, Mom, I can go to University of Hawaii. And she said, do you know how much Daddy makes? We can't afford it. There is no money. I said, well, if I get a scholarship, even then I can't afford it. She said, I don't want you to work in the fields. I think you should do more. You go on the GI Bill, you join the service. I had to join the service for 3 years. And the reason I did that was that she decided that I should be a dental technician. Where that came from, I can't tell you. She actually originally wanted me to be a hairdresser.
But the military didn't pay you to go to college?
No, there was none in the military, right?
You know, you're the first woman I've met
Really?
from Hawaii who's done that. How many were there in your group? Women?
Well, I think when we left, from Maui, I think we had something like 4, maybe a little bit more. I'm not sure. But there were just a handful of us, just a handful. And I have to tell you, Leslie, that was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my entire life, was to leave my mother and leave my father and my sisters and my brothers. And I, to this day, feel that it was the very thing, though, that gave me the strength to continue to pursue the wonderful life that I have enjoyed.
Leona Rocha Wilson grew up in small-town Maui, rich with ethnicities and mutual respect. Her military experience was a wake-up call to the realities of racial segregation on the mainland.
The first thing they told us that first weekend in Anniston, Alabama, that we could not, us white, supposedly white folks, could not go with the other local girls to town, because the prejudice existing in those days. So I remember they said I couldn't go with my friends, so I stayed home. I didn't go. I mean, I stayed in the barracks. Didn't go. It was difficult. It was really difficult.
What ethnicities were your friends?
They were mixture. They were Asian. They were Hawaiian. They were Filipino. They were a mixture of my friend Yvonne Yamani was a mixture.
And segregation was in full swing.
Was in full swing. We had to use separate bathrooms, separate toilets, not in the military, of course, but certainly in town. And I then went to Fort Sam Houston, Texas, where the all the dental technician school took place. What was interesting about that was that we were the first group of women to go into the dental technician school. And we started, I think, with probably about 7, 8, maybe 10 women, and 30 or 40 or 50 men, and only 4 of us graduated.
Why is that?
All the other girls dropped out. It was so difficult. And 2 of the girls, one was a girl from Oahu, and one was myself, and the other 2 were mainland people. And so we were the first group of women to graduate. So it was dental technician. But then I ended up going to Fort Belvoir, Virginia, and they put me as a dental assistant. And that's where I got my training. And during the entire time I was in the military, and I have to tell you this because I did bring those bonds, my mother again said, well, Leona, you know what, you'll have the GI Bill when you come out of the service, but you're also going to need money when you come out. Out of the money that I got every month from the military, I had to send home 2 U.S. savings bonds. I ended up sending home the bonds, and I have them to this day.
Oh, you never needed them.
Well, actually, I did cash in a few, but the rest I kept because it reminds me that, again, how important parents can be and should be, and if not parents, grandparents and aunties and uncles, in the development of a child's life. This is from Khalil Gibran, the philosopher, and he said that we are a collection of broken mirrors. Each piece reflects those we've met along the way.
After her military service, Leona Rocha Wilson moved to Brooklyn with her husband, whom she married while in the service. She was ready for new things, including a new profession. She just didn't know what it was going to be.
People ask me, did you want to study fashion in high school? I mean, did you draw pictures? And no, I had no idea.
And you didn't want to continue on with your dental career?
I worked at it for 2 years in New York on Madison Avenue. I had a wonderful mentor there. He taught me how to speak English. He'd read the paper to me, and
What do you mean he taught you how to speak English?
Yeah, what he taught me was there is an educated way of saying something or an uneducated way.
Well, how were you saying things?
Give you an example. I used to say, "Oh, this is cheap." He'd say, "Leona, this is inexpensive." So there are ways in which you can use more educated words, and he was trying to help me with those words.
So social graces.
Yes, and I'd serve tea. I was working for him, and he was in Madison Avenue, so he taught me how to speak properly to people, how to serve tea, and we would probably see 2 or 3 patients a day, and so I had plenty of time. He taught me about the stock market. I listened to him during that time, so he was a wonderful mentor. I think to grow, you must listen. And there will be many, many people in your life that will share many wonderful areas of improvement for you. And I did listen. And I worked for a woman called Eloise Curtis. She was a designer. And I worked there as a secretary, switchboard, whatever. I went to secretarial school too. That was something else I did. But I worked for her in the garment industry, and she taught me how to dress.
How did you dress?
Well, not well, obviously, because Eloise said, "We're going to have to do this for you." And
She hired you then?
Yes, she did. She did. As a matter of fact, at one point, I helped out with her sample modeling, and I think I was a size 1. That was Leslie, a long time ago, many, many sizes ago. And so she did help me to dress, to understand scale and proportion and color and my figure in relationship to what would be appropriate for me. And after her, I went to work for the aviation industry as a secretary. And at that point, I was married. I got pregnant. And when I was pregnant, I realized that the maternity clothes were awful. They were so ugly that you ended up, I looked at it, and expensive. So then I said to myself, hey, why can't I sew my own? So at that point, I looked to see what other classes I could go to, and I went to the YW, and they had a class on sewing. And I decided to sew my maternity clothes, and it was at that point I decided that fashion was great. Here I was, married, I was pregnant, I was working during the day, so that being said, I had to go to school at night. That was the only way because we needed the money, I had to work. So that's when the GI Bill came into play. And I got the GI Bill, went to Fashion Institute of Technology. Now, not even knowing there what I wanted to study, I signed up for pattern making. This is why, you gotta go out there and find out, you gotta do to find out what you don't like, and then do something so that you know what you do like. and I didn't like pattern making. All those numbers and math is not my strong suit. So I ended up saying, I don't want to be a pattern maker. So at FIT, then I went to see one of the teachers, and I said, look, is there something else? And he said, yeah, why don't you study apparel design? And that's where you drape fabric, and you don't have to worry about math. And so I decided to do apparel design, and it was at that point that 8 years later, I finally got my degree in apparel design. Though, I must say, with the help of my husband, the father of my son, my mother-in-law, because without them, going to school at night would not have been possible.
You continued to work.
I continued to work.
And take care of your child and go to school.
Yeah, and on weekends, that's all I had time to do was to do to do my work, my homework. And I did graduate with honors, which was an incredible task for me, and I'm very proud of it. My son came to my graduation at Carnegie Hall, interestingly enough. So, people say, how do you do these things? I can only say that my mother gave me this wonderful sense of positiveness. She was so positive. It's like, go do it. What's the worst thing can happen? You fail? So what? At least you know you don't want to do that, or you're not good at that.
It's not a waste of time to find out you don't really want to do this.
No.
While sewing her own clothes, Leona Rocha Wilson came up with the idea of creating a tool to assist the home sewer. With no clue of how to market her design, she reconnected with her former mentor, Joe Barta, who became a trusted advisor. Manufacturing her new device led to the creation of her own company, Fashionetics.
The home sewer had no idea how to change dress patterns. Dress patterns is made for a standard size, which is, I think, a 10. They might have changed it now because we're getting a little bit larger. But the average size was, I think, for size 10. And some of us were down here, and some of us were a little bit larger than the 10. So dress patterns, some of us have sloping shoulders, and some of us have full breasts, and some of us have large hips and small hips. So the variance in figure types required that you take this pattern that you purchased and change the pattern to suit your figure.
And until you invented the fashion ruler, people were just eyeballing it?
Well, they would fold the pattern, or they would kind of do what the pattern companies told them to do, which is primarily work from inside the pattern. And so when I came out with the fashion ruler, we used that fashion ruler to do the same thing a professional would do, and that is, if you want to change an armhole, you take that part of the ruler and you put it on the armhole and you lower it, you raise it. It's simple. It's simplified changing dress patterns to customize it for you personally. Now, how I got into a little bit more difficulty was this. I had the ruler, I designed the ruler, and
was it exactly the same as a ruler a professional uses? Or
no, it was a
different?
combination. The professional rulers, the fashion ruler is about 3 or 4 professional rulers made into one.
I see.
So I just combined all the lines into one. It was just simple. I had not thought of it until my mentor, Joe Barta, said to me, go ahead and try to do your own. And so when I created this ruler, I needed to have it was plastic. I needed to have it a mold made, which was very expensive. I needed packaging, I needed marketing, and I designed the ruler, but I had no clue about these other areas. So I went back to Joe Barta and I said, look, I have the ruler, this is what. He was the one that found the next person for me to be involved in, to make the fashion ruler. We then created the fashion ruler, we packaged it, and we're ready to sell it and bring it to the retail stores. Now, new ruler, no one ever saw it before, so what that says is that nobody knew how to use it. So I had to go out to the stores to teach women how to use these rulers, and that's how I got started talking with women, which I just loved. I travel the country, I show them how to change dress patterns using the ruler, and that was the very thing that got me involved with television and set my company up. I did get a US patent. I created more more rulers and more devices for the home sewing industry. So have I ever worked in the garment industry to create fashion? No, I started my own business called Fashionetics.
An inventor.
Yeah, it was fun.
And were they big selling items?
Oh, it's being sold today as we speak.
Leona Rocha Wilson also authored the book, Discover Fit Fashion in You, and married her mentor, Joe Barta. After his death, she sold her business, Fashionetics, and took on a new challenge as a national spokesperson for the home sewing industry.
I got this call from Simplicity, and they said, would you want to do television? And I said, look, I've never done television. What do I know about TV? He said, Leona, you can talk. So based on that, they sent me to California. We did a shoot, and they said, you're okay for it. Carol Lawrence was the hostess at the time. She did the show. And she and I had the best time. By the time I left the set, the producer asked me if I would take on the show for the following season, which I did, which was on Lifetime Cable, which is Lifetime today, and we did the sewing show. And that got me started on I'd never done television, but I remembered my mother saying, what's the worst thing can happen? They send you home, what's the worst thing can happen?
And it was a national cable show. Wow.
And from that, Simplicity needed a spokesperson. A lobbying firm in Washington came to Simplicity. They said, Leona, would you like to travel the country doing all their television show you remember the thing called Made in USA, Crafted with Pride, Made in USA? Well, I was their spokesperson. They sent me throughout the nation to do all the television shows, AM Los Angeles, New York, Today Show, you name it. And I did it for them in order to represent them on television, radio, and newspaper.
Leona Rocha Wilson became the first woman president of the national organization, the American Home Sewing Association, comprised of fabric companies, sewing suppliers, and sewing machine makers. Industry giant Vogue Butterick would woo Leona away from the Simplicity Pattern Company to become its national spokesperson. And eventually, Vogue Butterick's owner would woo Leona into marriage. At the time of this conversation in 2009, Bill and Leona Wilson had been married for more than 2 decades. Bill has been a strong supporter of Leona's continuing efforts to promote learning. Her show on Maui Community College's cable television channel showcases individuals whose lives have been transformed through family support for education.
They wanted me to have a little bit more educated title for the show, but I insisted that Go School No Come Like Me took us back to the plantation days. It was when they would say, go school, no come like me. You don't want to work in the fields. Better yourself. Become the best person you possibly can. Leslie, I'm sure you're aware that for every 100 students that enter our high schools here in Hawaii, 22 drop out of school. 30 drop out nationally. The dropout rate really, really bothered me and my husband. So we came up with this program, Go School No Come Like Me. It is to bring attention to the dropout rate and to reach the parents, the grandparents, the aunties, and the uncles. Just one small segment to let them know and to listen to stories of people who have made it, not necessarily always financially, but have lived fulfilled lives because they have had and they pursued an education. So Go School No Come Like Me, we have wonderful people that we've interviewed, people who have taken 3 jobs. Harrison Miyahira today owns a company that has over 400 people and has in 40 different countries, came from Kuau, and today went to school to Purdue, starved, and today owns this company, HM Electronics. These are the stories that just inspired me anyway by listening to chicken skin kind, that we hope that through Go School No Come Like Me and Maui Community College, that people will be aware of the dropout rate and will be aware that it takes a lot to make up or to influence the child to be the best he can or she can possibly be.
I think of your life, you did devote yourself to school, but you also did a lot of learning informally through mentors.
Oh yeah, I continue to. I continue to learn. I'm learning about building. We have a farm now. I have a farm. I'm a farmer. Look at my nails. I'm a farmer. We have 300 koa trees that we put in. I fertilize it. I have someone that helps me with it, but I'm out there pulling weeds. My sister Patsy and I, she's 82, and the two of us, typical Portuguese people, right? I'm back to the soil again. I'm raising trees, and I'm learning about it. It is a most enlightening, it gives me purpose for living when I am learning.
An endowment scholarship for students attending Maui Community College has been established by Leona and Bill. The community college's cable channel 55 is the home of her show, Go School No Come Like Me. Thank you, Leona Rocha Wilson, for sharing your long story short. And thank you for joining us on PBS Hawaii. I'm Leslie Wilcox. Ahui ho kako.
For audio and written transcripts of this program and all episodes of Long Story Short with Leslie Wilcox, visit pbshawaii.org.
And once you find that passion to make that commitment that you're going to do everything you can to accomplish that goal. And during that time and even after that, you cannot lose sight of your own self-respect. You don't lose sight of your word. All of that plays that part, who you are. You don't lose it. You maintain it, and you manage to fulfill your dreams by pursuing and making that commitment to that passion.